Greg once said, honesty was the glue of our marriage. Turns out he bought the cheapest brand on the shelf, the kind that flakes off your fingers in rubbery bits if you so much as breathe on it. I didn't learn that from a dramatic confrontation, no screaming showdown, no soap opera slap. I learned it from a live stream I wasn't even supposed to see, the kind that pops up when a mutual friend forgets to remove you from their close friends only list. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Back to earlier, before the cracks were visible, before I started noticing that Greg laughed at jokes on his phone I apparently wasn't worthy of hearing. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Lena Whitmore, 34 years old, owner of a small but profitable floral studio called Lena's Garden. The kind of shop that smells like eucalyptus and sanity. You'd be amazed how much life makes sense when you're elbow deep in peonies. Flowers don't lie. They wilt exactly when they mean to. They open when they're ready, and no rose ever pretends it wasn't in someone else's vase the night before. Greg, my husband of 8 years, works as a regional sales manager for a tech security firm. I didn't used to care what regional sales meant. Now I know it translates to enough traveling to get suspicious, not enough prestige to be impressive at dinner parties. We live in a suburb where lawns are manicured to military precision, where neighbors wave across driveways long enough to gossip silently with their eyes. Think perfect shutters, identical mailboxes, and a constant scent of grilled perfection drifting over fences. The kind of neighborhood where nothing ever looks wrong until you zoom in. The first sign wasn't the haircut. It wasn't the new cologne either, though both came suspiciously close together. No, the first real warning was subtler. Greg started calling me Buddy, not Love, not Len, not even Hey. Just Buddy, like we were teammates in a company softball league. Hey, Buddy, did you pay the water bill? Buddy, I'm heading out early. Later, Buddy. I tried to laugh it off, but a little voice in my head said, Congrats, you've been downgraded from wife to golden retriever. Then came the phone. Greg used to toss it around the house like a sock, on the counter, on the couch, in the bathroom while showering. Suddenly, the man who once forgot his phone in the fridge, yes, fridge, now accidentally, left it in the car, turned face down, with notifications muted. He never said, don't touch it, but he might as well have labeled it caution, radioactive jealousy hazard. The haircuts got sharper, his gym bag got heavier, his cologne reached a level I'll generously label aggressively hopeful. But I didn't act. I watched. I collected mental notes like a florist deciding which petals to trim. I wasn't sure yet if there was someone else, but I knew there was something else. And that was enough to make me observe instead of accuse. If marriage has stages, I had entered the quiet detective phase. Around this time, my neighbor Helen, the unofficial mayor of our street, stopped by with oat muffins and a suspiciously enthusiastic smile. Helen is 58, retired, and runs the kind of gossip traffic control that could win federal funding. She said, I've been seeing Greg out at different hours lately. You know, work must be intense. She held the word intense like a wine glass she didn't quite trust. I shrugged. He's been busy. She tilted her head. Busy is one thing, shiny is another. Shiny. That stuck with me. Greg wasn't just busy, he was polished, repackaged, market-ready. A week later, I got the live stream. I wasn't even looking for anything. I was on my lunch break, eating leftover pasta on the shop floor between tulip shipment invoices, when my phone buzzed. My friend Michelle had posted a live stream from a rooftop restaurant. String lights, skyline, clinking glasses, that kind of thing. I almost scrolled past, except I saw someone in the background with a familiar jawline, then familiar shoulders, then familiar watch, and then familiar wedding ring, inconveniently still on. Greg. Not in Denver, where he said he was meeting a client. Not even close. He was 5 miles from home, on a rooftop I'd suggested we go to for our anniversary, an idea he dismissed because reservations are impossible. Apparently not that impossible if you bring the right company. But the worst part wasn't the lie. It was the hand, Greg's hand, resting casually, comfortably, like it had been there many times before, on the knee of a woman I'd never seen. Blonde hair, expensive nails, the kind of person who speaks in phrases like, "I don't usually do carbs," but orders champagne by the bottle. I didn't gasp, I didn't scream, I didn't drop my phone. I simply clicked save video, because if my marriage was going to crumble, I wanted the paperwork. I sat there in the middle of my shop, surrounded by orchids that bloom only when you treat them just right, and I felt something I can only describe as a lid sliding shut. Nothing wild, just final. That's when my planning mind kicked in, the part of me that can organize a wedding arch in a thunderstorm. I did not throw a vase. I did not text him paragraphs of fury. I did not drive to the rooftop and drag him home by his tie. Instead, I did what a florist does. I arranged. First, I booked a weekend at a luxury spa using his credit card rewards points. Full-body massages, seaweed wraps, champagne bath. Yes, that's a thing. Second, I called my cousin Caroline, who works for a family law firm, and had already drafted divorce papers for 3 other women in our zip code. Third, I checked the title on Greg's vintage Mustang. Fun fact, when Greg got the Mustang, he put it under my name, just in case. He said it was a romantic gesture. Turns out it was more of a practical future profit gesture. If he can lie with a smile, I can sign with a pen. Still, I played normal. That night he called from his hotel, with the same voice he used when asking me to buy more toothpaste. "Hey, buddy," he said. "Hey," I answered, calm as still water. "How's the shop?" "Blooming." I let the silence stretch, just to enjoy his confusion. He didn't sense the shift. Why would he? Greg believes in his own harmlessness like it's a religion. The next morning, I printed the Livestream screenshots and placed them in a silver folder, the kind brides pick for engagement contracts. Label, for later. Then I set up a listing for the Mustang. I priced it lower than he'd ever agree to, just fast enough for collectors to practically trample me with offers. When the buyer arrived, cash in hand, I signed, smiled, and waved like a pageant queen. I didn't feel petty. I felt hydrated. I didn't confront him when he came home 2 days later, suitcase rolling behind him like a faithful dog. I simply noted his tan, the faint scent of someone else's perfume on his shirt, and his casual whistle as he dropped his luggage by the stairs. "Trip was fine," he said, kissing my cheek without looking at me. I smiled, because nothing scares a liar more than calm. He didn't notice the missing Mustang. Not yet. He didn't notice the manila envelope in my desk drawer, holding divorce papers and screenshots. Not yet. He didn't notice me. Which is funny, considering everything that came next was built entirely on him underestimating me. But the real turning point wasn't the live stream, or the car sale, or even the divorce papers. The real turning point came when I watched him scroll on his phone that night, laughing at a message he wouldn't let me see. I saw the exact moment his thumb hovered, paused, and deleted a notification. That's when something clicked. I didn't need to confront him. I needed to rearrange the stage so that when he finally looked up, the whole set had changed, and I'd already left the building. And to do that, first I had to pretend nothing had changed at all. So I said, "Hey, Greg?" "Yeah," he answered, still staring at his phone. "Next month I'm thinking of taking a little time for myself. A spa weekend, maybe." He smirked. "You? A spa? Since when?" "Oh," I said, turning the page of my magazine. "Since now." He didn't ask a single follow-up question, and that told me everything. It told me I wasn't part of his world anymore. which meant I was free to reinvent mine. And as it turns out, revenge starts best when the other person doesn't notice you've already moved your chair to the head of the table. He had no idea the story had already shifted, but the flowers did. They always know when something is about to wilt. And I was done watering the wrong garden. When Greg left for work the next morning, I stood at the window and watched him walk to his car with the air of a man who believed in his own narrative. He wore a crisp shirt the color of approval and carried his briefcase like a prop from a corporate commercial. I smiled as the Mustang's absence finally registered. He paused, frowned at the empty driveway, looked at his key fob like it had betrayed him, then stomped to his backup car, the practical sedan he called the commuter. I sipped my coffee. If he asked later, I'd say the Mustang had a tune-up appointment. Nothing technical enough for him to question. Greg's understanding of cars started and ended with the word premium. Once he drove off, I went back to my studio. I needed the quiet. The shop smelled like lavender and new beginnings. The bell over the door chimed softly as I unlocked it, and the morning light filtered through the window in polite rectangles. It was one of those ordinary mornings that felt suspiciously calm, like the universe was holding its breath. I opened my laptop and began searching for spas within a 2-hour radius. If you ever want to feel empowered, book something expensive using your spouse's credit card points. It's like emotional cashback. I chose the highest-rated retreat, the kind that calls their staff wellness artisans and offers detox smoothies that look like melted emeralds. I selected the renewal package, complete with a private suite and a ridiculous robe I'd definitely steal. Greg's reward points covered it all, which felt poetic. If he could lie about business trips, I could treat myself to inner peace on his dime. Then I called Caroline. My cousin's voice came through bright and practical, like a cup of strong coffee. "Tell me you're finally calling about those papers," she said. "I'm calling about those papers," I answered, keeping my tone steady. "Good. I knew it. What happened?" "A live stream," I said simply. "A rooftop restaurant. One client too many." She let out a sharp breath. "Lena, are you sure?" "I have screenshots." "That's my girl," she said. "No confrontation." "Not yet. I'm saving the fireworks for the finale." "Perfect. I'll prep the documents. You can sign them this week if you're ready." "I'm beyond ready." I hung up and stared at the roses on my workbench, a bouquet half finished for a customer's anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me. The husband had requested something bright and lasting. I added thorns intentionally, tucked between the petals where they wouldn't be noticed until too late. A little piece of honest symbolism. That afternoon, Helen came by again, armed with her usual offering of muffins and unsolicited wisdom. "I saw Greg's car missing," she said, eyebrows raised. "Everything all right?" "Just a repair," I said. "Oil change, tire thing." "I forget." Helen leaned against the counter like she owned the shop. "Men and their toys," she said knowingly. "They treat cars better than wives." I smiled. "Well, the car doesn't talk back." "Oh, honey," she said, "they all talk back eventually. Some just wait until the engine light's on." She gave me a pointed look that might have been sympathy or gossip. With Helen, it was always both. After she left, the bell chimed and the silence felt thicker, heavier. I turned on music, something soft and harmless, and let it fill the empty spaces of my thoughts. By evening, Greg texted me from work. "Hey buddy, long day. Might stay late for dinner with the team." The nerve, the buddy, the transparent repetition of the same line he'd used before his business trip. I typed back, "Sure thing, take your time." He replied with a thumbs-up emoji, digital affection at its laziest. Instead of dinner, I poured a glass of wine and sat on the porch. The neighborhood was quiet, except for the hum of sprinklers and the occasional bark of someone's overfed retriever. Across the street, the Petersons were having an argument loud enough to echo down the block. I envied their honesty. At least their problems were public. Mine was still staged behind the glass of composure. Around 9, my phone buzzed again. A message from Michelle, the friend who'd accidentally live-streamed my husband's rooftop date. She'd probably just realized what she'd done. Her text said, "Lena, I didn't know. I swear I didn't realize he was there until people started commenting. Are you okay?" I stared at the screen. Was I okay? Not really. But okay is a word that doesn't mean much once you've seen your marriage dissolve in 720p resolution. Still, I wrote back, "I'm fine. You did me a favor." She replied instantly. He looked so casual, like it wasn't even a secret. It wasn't, I typed, not for him. That night, I barely slept, not from grief, more from logistics. My mind ran through timelines, accounts, what I owned jointly, what I didn't. I made a list: spa booking confirmation, legal appointment, car sale transfer, financial cleanup. Each line felt like reclaiming inches of myself. Greg had taken my trust. I was taking inventory. By morning, I felt lighter in the strangest way. The kind of lightness that comes when you've stopped pretending something can be fixed. I brewed coffee, opened the curtains, and saw Greg's sedan parked crookedly in the driveway. He was home early. He walked in with that disarming grin, the one that used to work. "Morning, buddy," he said, setting down a bag of pastries. "Morning," I replied, masking everything. "I got you your favorite, almond croissant. Figured you'd be tired after your long week." He was trying, I could tell. Not out of guilt, though. Greg didn't do guilt. He did damage control. I took the croissant, smiled, and watched him butter his toast like nothing in the world was broken. "How's the Denver client?" I asked. He froze for half a second, then recovered. "Good. Productive trip. They're interested in our new software." "Must have been great weather," I said casually. "Yeah, sunny all week." I took a sip of coffee. Strange. I thought Denver had that cold snap. Michelle mentioned it. His jaw tightened just enough for me to notice. Maybe the forecast changed. Maybe. I smiled sweetly. Climate's unpredictable. He nodded, took another bite, and didn't look at me again for the rest of breakfast. Later, at the shop, I drafted a polite message to his company's HR department. It was short and surgical. Subject: professional conduct concern. I attached the Livestream link and wrote, "Thought you might want to verify that the client dinner involved an employee from a rival firm. Perhaps relevant to confidentiality policies. No signature, no explanation, just facts." Before hitting send, I hesitated for a heartbeat, then clicked. The whoosh of the email felt satisfying, not loud, not triumphant, just right. By noon, I got a confirmation receipt. Someone had opened it. I imagined the HR team watching the video, recognizing the branded name tags in the background, the company polo Greg had so proudly worn. I pictured the silence that followed, the kind of silence that means someone's in trouble. The same afternoon, a customer came in for sympathy flowers. Her husband had left her for a younger woman. She cried while describing the arrangement she wanted. I handed her tissues and listened. When she left, I realized I hadn't felt pity, only recognition, the sisterhood of women who wake up one morning and realize they've been living in someone else's fiction. By evening, Greg called. "Hey, buddy, I might be home late again. Meeting got pushed." "Sure thing," I said. "Oh, by the way, your boss called earlier. I told him you'd ring back." Silence on the line. Then, "My boss, what did he say?" "Something about policy reviews. You should probably check your email." He paused again. "Right, will do." When he came home that night, his face was different. Stressed, pale, the way someone looks when they realize the ground they've been walking on was actually glass. He barely spoke, just went straight to his office and shut the door. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The next day, I took my spa trip. The resort was as ridiculous as advertised. White robes, soft music, Strangers whispering about energy flow. I loved every second. I turned my phone on silent, ignored his calls, and let other people bring me herbal tea while I floated in eucalyptus-scented water. By the second day, the front desk told me I had 8 missed calls and 3 voicemails from Lena Whitmore. I deleted them all without listening. When I got home Sunday night, the driveway was empty. Greg's sedan was gone. Inside, the house smelled faintly of his cologne, but felt different, like someone had opened all the windows and let the past out. On the kitchen counter sat a single note in his handwriting. "We need to talk. Please call me." I didn't. Instead, I opened my email. There was a message from Caroline. "It's official. Signed and filed. You're free, cousin." I smiled at the word free. It looked good on the screen. Better than wife, anyway. Around midnight, Greg showed up. He didn't knock. He had that frantic energy of someone trying to fix a problem they can't define. "Lena," he said, stepping inside. "Can we talk?" I leaned against the counter. "Sure. How was Denver?" He looked away. "It's not what you think." "Oh? Because what I think is that you were having dinner with an employee from a rival firm, and now HR has questions." He blinked. "You sent that?" "I did." "You ruined my job." "No, Greg. You did that when you couldn't keep your hand to yourself." He rubbed his temples. "Lena, please, it was just—" "Don't," I said sharply. "Don't make it small. You can shrink a shirt in the wash, not trust." He sighed, pacing. "You could have talked to me first." "I could have," I said. "But you didn't give me that courtesy when you decided to rewrite our vows behind my back." He looked around like he expected the walls to defend him. "I made a mistake, okay? You can't just—" "I can," I interrupted. "I already did. The papers are signed." His face fell. "You're serious?" "As a subpoena." He took a step closer, lowered his voice. "What about the house?" "In my name." "The car?" "Sold." He blinked, speechless. "You can't just—" "Greg, everything you can't just has already happened. You should have read the fine print when you made me sign those joint forms years ago." For once, he was silent, truly silent. I walked past him, opened the front door, and gestured politely. "Good night, Greg. HR will contact you in the morning." He didn't move at first. Then he grabbed his suitcase, the same one he'd used for his fake business trip, and walked out. No words, no dramatic goodbye. Just footsteps fading into the driveway. I shut the door, leaned against it, and exhaled. Not relief exactly, more like balance restored. I checked my phone. A new message had arrived from an unknown number. It was short. "You don't know the full story." Attached was a blurry picture of Greg and the same blonde woman, standing in what looked like a hotel hallway. Beneath it, the caption, "He promised me everything." I didn't reply. Not yet. There would be time for that later. For now, I poured another glass of wine, walked to the window, and looked out over the quiet, perfect street. The lawns glowed under the streetlights, manicured and artificial, each one pretending nothing ever happens behind its closed doors. I smiled. The neighborhood loved a scandal. And I had just given them the story of the year. If there is one universal truth about suburban neighborhoods, it's this. No catastrophe stays private longer than a sprinkler cycle. By the time Greg's HR situation turned from informal review to mandatory investigation, the rumor network of Willow Creek had already named it the Whitmore scandal, complete with speculative side plots, exaggerated motives, and at least 3 versions involving offshore accounts. I didn't correct any of it. I just watered my hydrangeas and waited for the next domino to fall. It came faster than expected. 3 days after Greg walked out with his sad little suitcase, I was trimming eucalyptus when Helen marched into the shop, holding her phone like it contained national news. "You didn't tell me it was that serious," she said, eyes gleaming in the way only someone with equal parts concern and curiosity could pull off. I didn't know we were grading seriousness now, I replied, tying a ribbon. You always were the calm one. She leaned in, dropped her voice. But he's officially on leave. The company suspended him this morning. HR called it contract breach and compromise protocol. That's fancy talk for someone talked. I didn't need to pretend confusion. Well, they're thorough. Thorough, she laughed. Lena, they scrubbed his company profile. They removed him from the website before lunch. That's not thorough, that's a corporate disappearing act. The bell chimed again and 2 customers walked in, which saved me from replying. Helen left, whispering that I could always count on her if I needed anything, which, in Helen speak, meant she'd monitor the street like a hawk waiting for a dropped sandwich. The rest of the day at the shop was business as usual on the surface. Birthday bouquets, sympathy arrangements, a dramatic bride-to-be complaining that roses are too obvious. Beneath it, though, I could feel the shift. Word was spreading. People looked at me differently, not with pity, not exactly with admiration, but with the curiosity you get when someone you underestimated suddenly flips the table and reorganizes the pieces. By evening, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but instinct nudged me. Lena? A voice said, male. Hesitant. It's Cliff. We met once at Greg's company cookout. Ah, yes, Cliff. Mid-40s, married. The kind of man who wears polos tucked into jeans and thinks team building is a personality type. What do you want? I asked. Look, I'm not taking sides, he began, which meant he absolutely was. But you should know Greg's been staying at my guest house, temporary, until things settle. That sounds neighborly, I said flatly. He's not doing great, Cliff continued. He thinks maybe. Cliff, I interrupted, if this is about reconciliation, tell him I prefer legal documents to heartfelt monologues. It's not that, he said quickly. He's scared. HR is going through his expense reports, travel logs, everything. They're saying he shared client data with someone outside the company. I smiled to myself. Interesting. And that woman? Cliff added. The one from the video. She got fired this morning, too. Well, I said, actions have reactions. Cliff sighed. Just thought you'd want to know. I did, I said. Thanks for the update. Tell Greg I'll mail his mail. I hung up before he could try to recruit me for the pity parade. The next morning, the first physical revenge idea arrived like a well-timed flower delivery. I was driving to the post office when I saw a bright silver Audi parked in front of a trendy juice cafe. The kind of car that comes with a personality, sleek, inflated ego, expensive insurance. I recognized the parking sticker on the windshield. It belonged to the rival tech firm Greg's lover used to work for. Tessa. Of course. She was inside, sipping something neon green and scrolling her phone with the same smug expression she wore in the rooftop livestream. I parked 2 spots away, remained in my car, and waited like someone who had all day. Which, at that moment, I did. When she finally came out, she didn't notice me. She adjusted her sunglasses, tossed her hair, and got into the Audi like she was auditioning for an ad called Entitlement on Wheels. She didn't even look at the glossy paint when she closed the door. That almost offended me more than the affair. She drove off. I followed, not closely, just enough to stay in range. She turned into a quiet development 2 neighborhoods over and pulled into the driveway of a modern rental house with identical shrubs and a patio that looked staged by a realtor. I waited until her door shut. Then I got out. I didn't key the car. I didn't smash anything. Too obvious, too traceable. Instead, I took the florist shears from my passenger seat, the same ones I used to trim ribbon and thorn stems, and knelt by the back tire. A quick puncture through the sidewall, silent and efficient. Not enough to flatten immediately, but enough for her to discover it hours later, probably on the way to something she couldn't afford to be late to. I stood up, brushed imaginary dust off my jeans, and walked away. No rage, no shaking hands, just control. Back at the shop, I spent the afternoon assembling an order for a retirement party, all while waiting to see how long it took for the fallout. It arrived at 4:17 p.m. in the form of a furious voicemail from a number I didn't know but instantly recognized by tone. "Are you insane?" the woman snapped. "You think I don't know it was you? Greg told me everything. You're a psycho. You better watch yourself." The voicemail cut off. Probably hit her character limit. I replayed it twice, not because I needed to hear the words, but because the panic in her voice was its own bouquet. That night, Greg texted me. "Was that really necessary?" I replied, "Define necessary." He didn't respond. The next morning, business exploded. Not for flowers, but for conversation. A woman picking up a bridal bouquet whispered, "Is it true he got fired?" A man buying tulips for his wife leaned in and said, "Heard you handled things like a lawyer with a grudge." Even my delivery guy asked if I'd really taken down a corporate chain of command with a single email. Apparently, I was now folklore. I spent the afternoon reorganizing ribbon drawers, mostly because control feels best when applied to something tidy. Around closing time, a shadow appeared in the doorway. "Busy?" a voice asked. I turned. Tessa stood there, arms crossed, sunglasses pushed up like she was auditioning for the role of woman who underestimated the wrong florist. "Well," I said, "if it isn't the rooftop +1. She walked in, heels loud on the tile. "You vandalized my car. I enhanced your awareness of air pressure." "You're insane," she said softly, almost in awe. "You could have talked to me." "We're not in a talkable relationship," I said. "You're the woman holding hands with my husband while I paid our mortgage." She shifted uncomfortably. That pleased me. "Greg told me you were dramatic," she said. "I didn't think he meant strategic." "Well," I said, "he never paid enough attention to words." She hesitated, then leaned in. "He's losing everything, you know. Job, house, friends. I hope that makes you feel good." "It doesn't," I said, "but it makes things accurate." She scoffed, turned, and walked out. The door shut harder than necessary. I rearranged a vase of lilies, no tremor in my hands, no second thoughts. Later that night, I got a text from Carolyn. "Public records updated. The house is now fully under your name. Greg officially signed off." Another from HR. "Thank you for the documentation. Internal review confirmed breach. Appropriate action taken." And then, unexpectedly, one more. From Cliff, "We need to talk. It's not just the affair. Greg was planning something bigger. Call me." I stared at the message, feeling something shift, not fear, not panic, but a new layer of awareness. I thought I had the full puzzle. Apparently, I had only seen the border pieces. I put the phone down, walked to the shop's front window, and looked out at the street. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't stay quiet for long. One thing was clear: Greg's mistakes weren't just personal, they were professional. And professional mistakes leave paper trails. Which meant I was only halfway done. Good. I wasn't finished rearranging the garden yet. Cliff texted again the next morning, this time with more urgency. "Call me. It's about Greg. And you're going to want to hear it before he spins it his way." I stared at the message while standing in my shop, fingers still dusted with pollen. The quiet hum of the refrigerator that kept the hydrangeas chilled suddenly felt louder, like the room was waiting with me. I hated giving Cliff the satisfaction, but I also hated incomplete information. So I called. He picked up on the first ring. "Lena, thank you. Look, I'm not proud to be involved in this, but I need to tell you what Greg was doing behind the scenes." "Behind the affair?" I asked. "That alone already fills a highlight reel." Cliff sighed. "This is bigger than that. He wasn't just lying to you, he was lying to the company, and to me." "I'm not shocked," I said, "but go on." He was channeling bonuses and tech perks under my name, made it look like I was the one misusing vendor credits, hotel expenses, gifted tablets from conferences. I thought it was normal cost sharing until HR started asking questions. And it turns out, he was building a separate account, one he planned to move out of the country once he got promoted. So he wasn't just cheating on me romantically, I said. He was cheating on everyone professionally. Exactly, Cliff said. If HR pulls the wrong paper trail, I go down with him. He'll walk away looking like a guy who made one poor romantic decision, and I'll be the one holding the bag. And why are you telling me? Because you already ruined the romance part, Cliff said with a hint of bitterness. And I need the rest of the story ruined too, properly. I leaned against the counter. What do you want from me, Cliff? Evidence, he said. Screenshots, emails, financial logs between Greg and that woman. You have access to things I don't, and I know you've already started digging. He wasn't wrong. While Greg was packing his suitcase of denial days earlier, I'd gone into our shared laptop and found more than browser history. I found folders labeled in ways only a guilty man trying to look innocent would do. Work backups, invoices, insurance docs. Inside were transaction lists, email printouts, spreadsheets, all with Greg's fingerprints. You're asking me to help make sure Greg loses more than a job, I said. I'm asking you to help make the truth harder to bend, he replied. I didn't answer right away. I watched the petals of an open lily fall, one by one, onto the counter, slow, inevitable, quiet. Send me what you have, I finally said, and I'll decide. That afternoon I drove by the guest house Cliff mentioned. I didn't park close. I didn't want Greg to see me. I just wanted to confirm he really was there. He was. I spotted him through the open blinds, pacing, phone in hand, hair messier than usual, the kind of frantic pacing people do when the story is slipping through their fingers faster than they can rewrite it. He wasn't the charming, joking salesman anymore. He looked smaller, and not in a way that made me feel sympathy. As I pulled away, something caught my eye. The silver Audi again, parked across the street. Tessa had apparently decided to play the supportive partner in Greg's crisis. I almost laughed. Supporting Greg was like standing under a ceiling fan someone kept loosening the screws on. That's when the next idea came. Not illegal, not dramatic, not loud, just inconvenient in a way that attaches itself like a stain. I didn't act immediately. I waited until night, when the neighborhood got quiet enough that even sprinklers sounded like footsteps. I parked down the road and walked back, hoodie on, hair tucked away. No one would recognize me from a distance, not in the dark. The guest house had exterior smart lights, motion activated, so instead of approaching the door, I circled to the back. Greg's sedan was parked crookedly in the driveway. Next to it, the Audi. I didn't touch either this time. I wasn't repeating the tire trick. Predictability is how amateurs get caught. Instead, I slipped a small envelope under each windshield wiper. Anonymous. Inside, copies of the financial files I found, heavily highlighted, with one neat sentence on a sticky note. One of you is being used. Figure out which one. Then I left. It wouldn't destroy anything outright, but it would infect the trust between them, the same way Greg infected my marriage. By morning, the reaction had already started. Greg called me 4 times before noon. I didn't answer. Then came the text. What did you do? Then another. You need to stop. You're making a scene. And my favorite, you look crazy, you know that. Whenever a guilty man calls a woman crazy, it's because he's run out of ways to sound smarter than her. Still, I knew this wasn't enough. The affair was exposed, the job was torn away, but there was still too much dignity left in the story on his side. He could still spin it as unfortunate, but I'll rebuild. I wasn't done until that sentence became impossible. That night, Cliff sent me the files, email chains between Greg and Tessa about competitive extraction, lists of conference access codes, reimbursement threads where Greg submitted expenses twice under different names. There was even a memo from Greg where he pitched the idea of strategic information leaks as a way of flushing out market advantage, all while publicly bragging that he was too loyal to ever jump ship. I read everything twice. Then I wrote one email, sent to HR anonymously. You missed a file. Attached are receipts showing personal gain tied to confidential assets. You may want to review dates, accounts, and transfer names. The internal audit was incomplete. They replied within 10 minutes, received. Thank you for your assistance. The next morning, the news broke internally. Greg wasn't just suspended, he was blacklisted. Anyone who'd recommended him, vouched for him, or referred business to him was being reviewed. People weren't just angry. They were distancing themselves. I knew it because suddenly my inbox filled with messages from his co-workers, disguised as checking in, really meaning, please confirm I am not collateral damage. I didn't reply to any of them. Not my witnesses, not my circus. But I wasn't prepared for what came later. I was closing the shop when I heard footsteps outside. Not the usual customer pace. Faster, hesitant. I looked up. It was Greg. He didn't look polished this time. Shirt wrinkled, face drawn, eyes flashing with the kind of panic people try to hide behind charm. He didn't knock. He barged in. What are you doing? He demanded. Arranging lilies, I said, not looking up. Want one? This isn't funny, Lena. It's accurate, though. He came closer, voice sharp. You're sabotaging me. I set down the shears. No, I'm revealing you. That's different. You think you're some kind of hero? No. Heroes fix things. I just stop them from spreading. He slammed his hand on the counter. The vase rattled. Water sloshed. You're enjoying this? No, Greg, I said calmly. Enjoyment is what you were doing on that rooftop. He stepped back, breathing hard. I saw the moment he realized there was no version of himself he could present that would sway me. Then the bell over the door chimed again. Tessa walked in. Perfect timing, like the universe had booked her as the closing act in a tragic play. She glanced at Greg, then at me. He used both of us, she said. He told me you were unstable, that the marriage was practically over. He said I was the only one who understood him. I raised an eyebrow. And that convinced you? I was stupid, she admitted. I get it now. Greg turned to her. You said you'd stand by me. I said I'd stand by the man I thought you were, she snapped, not the one who put everything in my name so he could walk away clean. Ah, there it was. Greg hadn't just lied romantically or professionally. He'd weaponized her legally, and now she wanted payback too. The room felt full, not tense, not violent, just thick with the realization that Greg's world had officially collapsed from 3 sides, and he'd welded the door shut himself. Both of you ruined me, he said. You're proud of that? No, I said. Just finished with it. He stared at me like he expected something. Pity, regret, a crack in my logic. He found none, only the silence he earned. Then, without warning, he swiped the bouquet I'd been working on and hurled it to the floor. Glass shattered. Water splashed across my shoes. You don't get to stand there and pretend you're the victim, he said. Oh, I'm not, I replied. I'm the narrator. He froze for a second, like no one had ever said that to him before. Then he left. No apology, no final plea. Just the door swinging behind him, leaving shards of vase and lilies scattered like a scene that would never be put back together the same way. I didn't clean it up immediately. I just stood there, letting the silence settle. One more loose end severed. One more layer peeled back. And now, I wasn't just finishing a marriage, I was finishing a character. And I still had one act left. There's a certain satisfaction in knowing the person who used to believe he controlled the room now walks into every room wondering who knows the truth. That's where Greg was now, jumping at silence, drowning in consequences he once thought he was too clever to touch. And yet, as satisfying as all that was, I knew I wasn't finished. Not because I was angry. Anger fades. Strategy doesn't. The fallout from his job termination spread through the neighborhood like perfume in a church pew. Some people pretended they didn't know. Others asked fake casual questions like, "Is Greg traveling again?" But the eyes always said, "We heard everything, and we're waiting for the next chapter." That was fine. I was waiting too. There was still one thing missing. The moment Greg finally realized there was no return, no patchwork apology, no soft landing. That moment needed staging, which is why, 2 days after he shattered the vase in my shop, I sent him an invitation. A paper invitation, not a text, not an email. White cardstock, elegant script, sealed in an envelope. Greg always responded better to things that looked expensive. The invite read, "Dinner, just us." Wednesday, 7 p.m. One last conversation before everything is official. No details, no emotional bait, just formality. Enough to make him wonder if he still had a card left to play. He answered within an hour. "I'll be there." I didn't reply. That was the point. I spent the next day preparing, not emotionally, not spiritually, but physically. I cleaned the house, not for him, but for the scene. I set the dining table with the nice china we got as a wedding gift and used exactly twice. I lit candles, arranged flowers, not romantic ones, but white lilies, carnations, eucalyptus, elegant, detached. I cooked a full dinner because a well-fed man listens longer before realizing he's being buried in truth. And then I set the final piece, the sprinkler timer. We had a system installed last summer. Greg insisted on it because he wanted the lawn to look intentional. The timer box was in the garage. With a manual override, he never bothered to understand. I knew exactly how to set it. 7:45 p.m., right in the middle of whatever speech he thought would change the ending. A dinner drowning in water wasn't poetic, but it was honest. The house had always looked perfect from the outside. It was time the facade got soaked. Wednesday came. He arrived right on time, hair combed, shirt ironed, trying to look composed. When I opened the door, he gave me a smile I'd seen 1,000 times. The charming sales pitch smile. The one that worked on clients, waiters, airport gate attendants, and, once upon a time, me. "Thanks for inviting me," he said, stepping in. "I'm glad we can finally talk like adults." "I never stopped," I replied. He glanced around the dining room. "You did all this? Looks nice, like old times." Except this time, the truth got a seat. He ignored that. Of course he did. He was in salesman mode, confident, polished, certain he could flip the room with tone and posture. We sat. We ate. Or rather, he ate. I just observed him chew like the world hadn't shifted under his feet. Finally, he put his fork down. Showtime. "Lena," he began, soft voice, hands folded. "I know I made mistakes. I know I hurt you. But I think you've made this bigger than it had to be." "Bigger," I repeated. "You lied, cheated, manipulated your company, and built a secret exit plan using someone else's name. I didn't make it bigger. I just didn't make it smaller." He exhaled hard, like I was the unreasonable one. I was lost, okay. I felt disconnected. I thought maybe we were done, and I didn't know how to say it. "You did say it," I said. "Your hand said it on that rooftop." He swallowed. "I want to fix things." "No," I said. "You want me to fix the version of you other people are seeing now. Not the truth, just the reputation." "Then what do you want?" he snapped. "Everything's gone. The job, the condo offer, the deal I was working on." "Greg," I interrupted, leaning forward, "I didn't take anything from you. I just opened the blinds. You built your own storm." For a moment, he didn't respond. His eyes flicked to the flowers, the candles, the meal. Like he was realizing this wasn't nostalgia. This was a courtroom, and he was the only one who didn't know he was already sentenced. "You can't keep punishing me," he said finally. "At some point, you have to move on." "I already did," I said. "This dinner isn't about punishment. It's about clarity." He laughed sharply. "Clarity? You ruined my career." "No," I said. I revealed who you were in your career. That's different. You're enjoying this, he muttered. You keep mistaking focus for pleasure, I said. I'm not enjoying it. I'm completing it. Then 7:45 p.m. arrived. Outside, the sprinklers kicked on, except I'd adjusted the settings. Instead of watering just the lawn, the system activated the patio jets too, right outside the open dining room window. Water blasted sideways, hitting the glass, the siding, spraying into the room in a fine mist. Greg shot up. What the? I stayed seated. You wanted to wash your hands of everything. Consider it symbolic. He grabbed a napkin, wiping droplets off his sleeve. Turn it off. In a minute, I said calmly. First, I want to make sure you listen. He stared at me, drenched in confusion and finally fear. Your severance package, I said. Gone. HR knows about the duplicate expense reports. He blinked. The rival firm. They were sent your emails. They know you were trying to trade company data for a job offer that never existed. His throat moved, no words coming out. And Tessa? I added. She knows you listed her as a silent financial partner on an account you built without her consent. She's talking to legal, right now. He stepped toward me slowly. You set me up. No, I said. I set you free from the story you sold yourself. The sprinkler spray grew stronger, puddling on the hardwood. Greg looked around like the house itself had turned on him. I stood, blew out the candles one by one. This, I said, is what the inside of a lie looks like when the water finally gets in. He stared, realizing the dinner wasn't reconciliation. It was a funeral. Not of marriage. That part was already buried. Of his last illusion, that he was still in control. And then came the final shred of honesty. The only part I hadn't spoken yet, the one that snapped everything into place. You didn't lose me because you cheated, Greg. You lost me because you thought you could. A car horn sounded outside. Tessa's. She must have been waiting. Fitting, really. People like Greg never end alone. They always find someone else to hold the ladder while they fall. He turned toward the door, ready to storm out, to blame someone else next, to rehearse his next version of the story. But this time he didn't slam the door. He walked out quietly, because now he understood there was nothing left to negotiate. The water ran. The candles were out. The story had clicked shut. I watched his silhouette move down the driveway, not triumphant, not destroyed, just small. The kind of small a person becomes when the world stops bending for them. When the door closed behind him, I didn't exhale in relief. I didn't smile. I simply turned off the sprinkler system, wiped water from the window, and sat back down at the table. Not to eat, to enjoy the quiet. Not peace, completion. There was still one more scene to play out, but the last piece. That would take place somewhere louder, somewhere public, somewhere final. I wasn't finished yet, not until I ended the story the same way he lived it, on a stage with an audience and nowhere to run. The florist shop had seen its share of emotional weather, brides crying over centerpiece colors, husbands panicking over last-minute anniversaries, teenagers picking out apology daisies after being caught doing something regrettable. But it had never hosted a showdown, not the kind that turns a room electric before a word is spoken. That was about to change. It started with the community event, Willow Creek's annual Neighborhood Appreciation Day. The town loved any excuse to gather, eat overpriced cupcakes, pretend the property taxes were worth it, and photograph themselves in front of balloons that spelled Togetherness. Every year I donated the floral arrangements. This year was no different, except for one detail. This time, I stayed. My shop sat right across from the main park, so I left the doors propped open, music low, the air perfumed with fresh peonies and eucalyptus. People drifted in and out, some pretending they came for flowers, most pretending they didn't already know my personal history, like it was a mini-series they'd binge-watched. Lena, honey, you look radiant, Helen said, stopping by with her usual mix of praise and surveillance. Word is, Greg may or may not show up today. I can't control attendance, I said. No, she said, her eyes sparkling, but you seem to control outcomes. She wasn't wrong. At 2:14 p.m., I saw him. Greg walked across the park, wearing the outfit of a man desperately trying to look unbothered. Button-down shirt, neat hair, shoulders squared like someone had tightened invisible straps. People noticed. Conversations paused. The wind didn't pick up, but something else did. Attention. He wasn't headed for the crowd. He was headed for me. Of course he was. He always preferred a private audience, even in public. I stayed where I was behind the counter, wrapping a bouquet for a teenage girl who couldn't decide between hydrangeas or roses and looked like both terrified her. The bell chimed as Greg stepped inside. "You're really doing this here?" he asked quietly. "Doing what?" I asked. "Running my shop, participating in the community I actually belong to." His jaw tightened. "You know what I mean." "Oh, you mean consequences. Yes, those tend to follow people." He glanced around. The shop was full. Customers, neighbors, curious onlookers. Not packed, but full enough for witnesses. His eyes flicked toward the flowers, the ribbons, the open windows, where the noise from the park drifted in. "You think you've won," he said. "No," I said, tying a bow. "I think I finished the game you started." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You made me lose everything." I looked up. "No, Greg, you made choices. I made sure no one forgot them." He exhaled through his nose, the way people do when they're trying not to explode. "They're saying I'll never work in my field again, not even consulting." "Then maybe that field shouldn't have trusted someone who treated trust like a coupon." "You're proud of this?" "No," I said, placing the bouquet on the counter. "But I'm not apologizing for clarity." His voice rose, not a shout, but that sharp pitch a person uses when their ego starts slipping down a cliff. "You sabotaged my car, my career, my relationships." "Careful," I cut in. "The shop has great acoustics, but not great sympathy." The teenage girl who'd been waiting for her bouquet backed away slowly, clutching her flowers like emotional insulation. Greg looked around again and realized, maybe for the first time, that the room wasn't neutral. It wasn't background, it was audience. That's when he did exactly what I expected. He tried to pivot. "Everyone," he said, turning around, addressing the strangers like he was still head of something. "Before you all believe whatever version she's been selling." "You don't get to reclaim the microphone," I said, stepping out from behind the counter. There was quiet, not polite quiet, focused quiet. "You can say what you want," I told him. "But if you talk, and I talk with proof." His face shifted, realization settling in like a stain. "You wouldn't," he said. "You keep forgetting," I replied. "I already did." And then, because timing is its own language, the bell over the door chimed again. Tessa walked in. She didn't look confident. She didn't look angry. She looked like someone who had finally read the whole story and realized she was only a footnote. Her eyes went straight to Greg. "We're done," she said. "Whatever plan you thought we had, I'm not part of it anymore." Greg blinked. "Tess, come on. You know I never meant for you to—" "You used my name on paperwork," she said, voice shaking but sharp. "You tried to pin the accounts on me. If I hadn't gotten copies—" He turned to me. "You sent her those files. You really are unbelievable." "No," I said. "I'm believable now. You just never looked long enough." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "You two are so dramatic, blaming me for—" "You're not getting out of this with a speech," I said. "You're not at a conference. There's no slideshow behind you. There's no applause coming." That's when something in him snapped. Not with volume, but with intent. He grabbed one of the flower buckets, shoved it off the table, water spilling everywhere, stems scattering like confetti from a celebration gone wrong. People gasped. Then he shoved another. Then another. Vases cracked against the floor. Petals flew. Water soaked into the wood. The air smelled like snapped stems and panic. He wasn't hitting me. He was hitting the room. Which was worse, because it showed the truth. He only understood love when it was obedient. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't flinch. I just stood in the center of the wreckage he made and waited for him to realize something. Everyone was still watching, and not one person stepped in to defend him. Not one. Because control doesn't look like strength once the mask falls off. By the time he stopped, chest heaving, hands shaking, the shop was a storm of broken arrangements and floating petals. He looked around, as if waiting for someone, anyone, to say, "It's okay, Greg, we get it." No one spoke, not even Tessa, especially not Tessa. I stepped forward. "You finally did it," I said quietly. "Did what?" He spat. "Match the inside." He stared blankly. "This is what your life looks like now," I said, gesturing around. "Not because of me, because every time something cracked, you painted over it. And eventually, the wall gave out." His throat moved. His eyes darted to the door, to the people, to the mess he couldn't undo. Then the final break. Helen, standing near the doorway, raised her phone and said loudly, "Just documenting this for the neighborhood file." A ripple of whispers. Greg froze. All that confidence, all that posture, all that certainty, gone. No exit speech, no apology, no last-minute charm. He just walked out, not fast, not furious, just gone. The bell chimed one last time, and that was it. No applause, no dramatic collapse. Just the clean, quiet end of a man who thought the world would hold his shape forever. I didn't chase him. I didn't speak. I just looked at the wrecked arrangements, the water pooling, the petals floating like white flags that came too late. Then I reached down, picked up a single lily stem from the wet floor, and placed it upright in an untouched vase on the counter. Behind me, the crowd slowly filtered out, whispering, buzzing, processing. In front of me, the shop was chaos. Inside me, the story was finished. No epilogue, no forgiveness arc, no after scene. Just a door, a silence, and a life no longer orbiting someone else's damage. My hands were steady, my breathing even, and the only thought in my head was simple. Now I can start without undoing first. The shop smelled like flowers and rainwater and endings. And this time, I didn't have to clean up someone else's mess, only rearrange the room the way I wanted it from now on.